Say that down the microphone. Hello everybody, how you doing? Nearly made a rude joke in front of you all. Welcome to the FuseBox. Hope you're all okay. Has everyone got a drink and comfortable and everything? It's a lovely space here. I really love the FuseBox. This is an innovation lab for creative technologists and artists working in and around immersive technology. FuseBox runs a whole range and series of events like this around creative tech. Loads of cool companies are already based here. So if you like the space and you're interested in becoming a FuseBox resident, you should probably, if you fancy like arranging a studio tour another time, maybe go and chat to gorgeous Chris over there in the corner, who's waving right now. Or Sol, is Sol in the room? Wait, give us a wave, gorgeous Sol. So either of those two chaps can arrange a tour around the space if you want to have one another time. Or you can check out FuseBox on the interwebs at thefuseboxbrighton.com. I hope I've got that right. It's thefuseboxbrighton.com. Tiny bit of housekeeping. We're not expecting any kind of fire drill, so if you do hear a fire alarm, it's real, and we just go out of these exits and it's really clearly signposted. No running. Thank you so much for coming. Welcome to Beyond the Stage, Live Music Meets a New Reality. What we're going to be talking about this evening is the impact of immersive technology on the live music sphere, on gigging. Got two people to chat to you, and we've got two people to do sort of short, any length presentations. No rules on the length. It could be really long. And then, so first we'll hear from Donna Close. Donna has been running the 5G Festival. She's one of the, basically as a creative producer, she's one of the most sort of key instigators that this town has had over the last 10, 15 years. Done incredible work. But for the purpose of this conversation, Donna is working with Brighton Dome, Brighton Festival on the 5G Festival and supporting the alternative stages as well. And then we'll hear from Nats Spada, who is a co-founder and a project director at Platform B, I was going to say pioneering, it is pioneering, the amazing pioneering local radio station that has exploded over the last few years with a focus on young people and enabling them to get into broadcasting. And then we'll hear from Bobby Brown. He's here now. Bobby's not going to do a sort of a formal presentation. I'm just going to throw a load of annoying questions at him. Bobby is an amazing creative producer and community activist, but he's here with his primarily, I mean, we'll digress a bit. We don't have to stick totally on track, but he's primarily here with his artist manager hat on. So we'll have a conversation about how the kind of issues of immersive technology and some of the opportunities and challenges that have come to light, hopefully, when we've heard from Donna and Nat. We'll talk about how some of that can directly impact artists. And then after that, you will have an opportunity to ask questions or throw in some comments to all three of our guests. We do like I know that sometimes in some events, the whole less of a question, more of a comment is really annoying. But here, I mean, there is probably quite a lot of expertise and experience in this room, both in the tech world, but also in the live music and live entertainment and promotion world. So if if any of you have thoughts and ideas you want to contribute, they'll be very welcome. So I won't whittle around anymore. I will welcome to the stage that sounds too rock and roll as well. Just please give a big hand to Donna Close.
It did sound very rock and roll. Hello, Brighton. Thanks for that, Chris. You always embarrass me. You're so kind and nice to me. Thank you for the lovely introduction. And hello, everyone. Really nice to meet you all, those who weren't here last time. So apologies to those who were, because some of this may be familiar to you. But what I wanted to do was just give you a little bit of context for the of the 5G Festival. Sorry. Trying to make this tech work. So you can see there that it's the world's first, they always say world's first in tech, but anyway, it's the world's first 5G-powered, internationally accessible, immersive festival experience. You'll see the image there. This is Sylvia Mwenze, amazing singer. She's been fantastic. She was involved in our March trials and in our June trials. So this is a project that started back in September last year. We've had like 2 major trials, and our next trials are next year, because this is really about trying to invent the technology that makes hybrid festivals possible. There's 3 aspects of it. They're called use cases. So the first one is about remote music production. So that's how artists can use this technology that's being invented to collaborate remotely. There's the virtual festival, so that's how that collaboration might be communicated to a remote audience, so they can view it on laptops or on headsets. And then there's the hybrid festival, and that's the bit that for me, I'm really interested. I mean, anyone who knows me is I'm really passionate about live events, but I'm also really passionate about how technology can add a new layer to those sort of live events. So the hybrid festival is about playing around with, okay, well, how can you place this technology alongside and as part of a live collective cultural experience? And that's the Dome Festival involved with that, and working with Wired Sussex and Platform B on aspects of that. These are all the partners. It's quite a big project. It's one of the 5G Create projects by from the government. So and they're not really that big 5G Create program is not really about the creative industries. We're one of the few that's really about, like, you know, the creative industries and about music. And the reason that we were successful in it is because we've got quite an interesting sort of set of partners. So this goes from like really big global companies like Warner Music Group, you can see there, to Sonosphere and Matavision, who are, you know, really small creative SMEs, and then obviously ourselves as a you know, an arts organisation, an arts charity. Digital Catapult are quite a key partner in it as well. So they're the 5G immersive technology experts, and they're part of a Brighton testbed partnership between the Dome and Festival, Wired Sussex and Digital Catapult as well. So that's really sort of built from that. These are some of the images. So one of the real challenges we had, first of all, was just thinking, well, actually, if you're going to have this collaboration, how do you communicate that to a live audience? And as so often, the solution to that is always by working with really incredible artists that can imagine new sort of realities. So we're working with the artist Make Amplify to create a sort of like you know, a really immersive VJ projection that incorporates all these different sort of possibilities of visual feeds into a live environment. So you can see there, so these are some of the images there from that. And we're working with Nick Driftwood, who's a videographer, and we're also working with musical director Kojo Samuel, who does like work with Stormzy and stuff to think about how we can make that music programme also really reflective of, like, you know, future-looking, international, diverse, all that sort of stuff. And this is a film from the June trials. What you'll see here is we've had artists in the Metropolis Studios and in the Dome, but in 2 different rooms, so they're in different environments but collaborating. And you can see there that they can see each other, and of course they can hear each other, and the latency has been reduced to such an extent that it makes that real-time collaboration possible. So this is our timeline. Like I said, we've got trials next week. Gosh, next week. The next trials on that as well. So it's moving on. But our sort of showcase, our project finishes in March next year. You know, and actually, you know, we're really, really keen to be working with our partners here to try and get, you know, it's going to be like a small audience. It's going to be invited only, but we really want some people to sort of come along so that they can give us some feedback to how this might be adopted in the future, this technology. So let us know, basically, if you want to come along. And that's it. I said it would be short, so that's it. Okay, thanks for your time.
Oh, thanks so much, Donna. Maybe if we'll figure out a way of collecting emails from people and they can come along, because the March showcase will be like some of this stuff, when we talk about it, it can easily fall into kind of quite a normal, dry conversation about music and about tech, but experiencing it is pretty mind-blowing, isn't it? And there are now ways that people can access quite simply and get a taste of it, and especially in March, I assume it will be a pretty epic experience as works in progress go. It'd be a really good, we are getting somewhere. So Nats Spada is a digital media producer, also a radio producer and presenter, and a musician, specifically metal. Used to present the most amazing proper metal show on Juice when Juice existed, which was brilliant. But Nats is here as co-founder and project director of Platform B. So although she came out of a music background, she's now enabling and instigating. It's almost a revolution. I mean, it's really exciting building a new radio station focused on young people and enabling younger people to get into broadcasting from the ground up at a point when conventional radio, both locally and nationally, well, we all know it feels like it's dying. It's in huge trouble. Radio isn't the kind of conventional models for radio are really struggling. But the Platform B project has just, spearheaded kind of a local renaissance in radio. And obviously we've now got Slack City, and other local radio stations have actually hugely benefited from it as well. We've got a whole new generation of people engaged in the radio world, and it's created a community that is just thriving, which is incredibly exciting. I'm a tiny part of it because I present a radio show on the sibling station of Platform B, which is Slack City Radio, which is the sort of the oldies version, the one that lets those of us in who aren't under 25. And just seeing as a sort of somewhat jaded contributor to that world that I sit there and then realise that the community is buzzing. It's like the WhatsApp groups are just thriving, and everyone really is looking out for each other in a way that I haven't experienced in radio in 20 years. So it's genuinely amazing. Now, Nats is mainly here to talk about the Alternative Stages project and the what's the name of it? So basically placing live music into virtual reality in a way that I hadn't really seen before. So please welcome to the lectern, Nats Spada.
Hi. Would it be possible to turn the lights down a little bit? I don't know if is that cool? Thank you. So I'm going to be chatting a bit about Platform B, just to give you guys context if you hadn't heard about the radio station. And then I'm going to go into our next-gen virtual reality project that we did in March of this year. So I'll just kick off with some background about Platform B. So Platform B is Brighton Hove's not-for-profit youth-led radio station, broadcasting online since 2016 and on 105.5 FM and DAB across the city since October 2018. The station is directed by a new generation of DJs, producers and presenters who are reimagining and diversifying the medium with an eclectic mix of music and youth programming. So as well as bringing you the latest from up-and-coming artists and championing new talent, Platform B has a dynamic team of over 100 volunteers, including DJs, presenters, producers, many of which work in the music industry, running their own gigs, club nights, producing their own music, as well as having an impact as an emerging wave of journalists and activists. So one of our main Platform B studios is at Brighton's legendary Green Door store, so an acclaimed music venue and nightclub underneath the railway station. As well as regular radio broadcasts from the Green Door store, we run successful pop-up radio broadcasts all around the city, and we've partnered with organisations such as Brighton Youth Centre, the Great Escape Festival, Lucy and Yak, Audio Active, the 2 universities, as well as Brighton Digital Festival. I just wanted to give you a background of where the ideas came for kind of getting into virtual reality, because you wouldn't really put like a radio station and VR together. So the vision for Platform B has always been for it to be trailblazing, and a multi-platform media project, so beyond linear radio, and also focusing on new and emerging formats, including spatial sound and virtual reality. So I started coming to events at FuseBox, and that was my first experience of VR, and I was totally blown away by the experience. And I started chatting to one of the FuseBox residents, George Butler from Mutiny Media, and he was working on an Arts Council project, developing his creative practice, looking at experimental VR spaces to perform and record. And we sort of started experimenting with virtual DJing and talking about running workshops with immersive tech and young people. So then, lockdown happened, COVID happened. So that severely disrupted our plans, as well as also the radio station as a whole. So our physical studio spaces shut, including the Green Door store, and all the DJs were broadcasting from bedrooms and front rooms. And with social distancing concerns, we didn't know when we were going to be able to return to our studios and as well as Green Door store, because the venue was closed. So we wanted to build a virtual space to meet and broadcast from, which would help sustain and strengthen the community of young creators. So we started having conversations about how we could do this. Accessibility was a very big part of the conversation, because a lot of young people don't have access to 300, 400 pound VR headsets. So we were thinking, how could we collaborate in a virtual space that would allow access from any device? And our co-founder, Daniel Nathan, came across Mozilla Hubs. So Mozilla Hubs is owned by the not-for-profit Mozilla Foundation and Mozilla Corporation. Many of you would have heard of their most well-known product, which is the Firefox browser. So Mozilla Hubs is an experimental and social web VR platform. It runs on most modern browsers, as well as mobile, desktop, and VR devices. It's also open source, which is great, which means the code is accessible and anyone can modify it. So during lockdown, we started experimenting with hubs and jumping into the virtual worlds that were ready-made. So you're able to move around the space as an avatar. And there's also spatial audio as well, which is creating sound in 360 degrees. And it mimics the real world, basically. Hubs also has a 3D scene web editor called Spoke, where you can import 3D object scenes, and you can either create them before you import them to into Spoke, or they've got ready-made scenes that you can use. So Mozilla designed it to highlight the ease of access it believes that VR needs, and describes it in a blog post as no gatekeepers, no installation process, just click and you are there. And that sits very much with the DIY ethos of Platform B. So as I just mentioned, we started taking a few of the Platform B crew into hubs just to see what they thought. And generally the feedback was positive, but the feeling was that it needed to be rooted in a real physical space rather than a virtual planet or club. So Green Door Store, as I mentioned before, is a big part of the radio station. It's one of our physical homes. We felt that by recreating the venue, it would give Platform B's young creators a hook into the unfamiliar world of VR and something they could use and a jumping off point to experimentation. So rather than recreating the Green Door Store as a 3D model, we discussed how we would make it feel as close to the real venue as possible, and we started experimenting with a process called photogrammetry. Photogrammetry is a technique to obtain reliable data of real-world objects in the environment by creating 3D models from photos. So you can see the live room, that's a photograph on the left, and photogrammetry on the right. So George, who we were working with from Mutiny Media, who I mentioned earlier, used a digital SLR, a Canon 6DD camera, and basically took loads and loads of raw, high-quality pictures of the Green Door Store. That was then imported into photogrammetry software called Reality Capture and exported as a polygon mesh, which is a structural build of a 3D model. and that's imported into Blender, which is a free and open source 3D modeling and animation suite, and then it was imported into Hubs. So that's another example. So that's the bar area at Green Door Store. So like I said, on the left is the photograph, and on the right is the photogrammetry. So once we had the virtual prototype of the Green Door Store in Hubs, we started experimenting with importing videos of DJ sets as well as live performances. We shared the first iteration of the virtual venue with music industry professionals, including Music Venues Trust, who did amazing work over lockdown with venues and keeping venues sustainable and alive and going, as well as independent label owners, promoters, and artists. The feedback was positive, and with the live sector still on hold, Platform B applied for an Arts Council project grant in November 2020, which allowed us to develop the idea further. So inspired by the way recording artists were creating real-time collaborative performances in VR-compatible games, including Fortnite and Minecraft, we wanted to create Brighton's first virtual reality gig. So we collaborated with Mutiny Media, ICSI, and FuseBox to create a groundbreaking public event in a virtual Green Door Store. So here are some, I'm going to show you kind of a couple of demos of the space. So that's a virtual Green Door Store, and there you can see, so this is in Mozilla Hubs, and those are the avatars of basically the audience watching the live gig. So the free event took place in March 2021, and it featured music and spoken word performances from 5 breakthrough artists, including Baklava, Nokia Mansion, Keon vs. Life, Kimara, Pris Nash, and Henna. We also broadcast the event on Platform B on 105.5 FM, DAB, and online. So ticket holders embodied a personal avatar at the gig and were able to move through the space, meet friends, and through spatial audio, interact with others in a way that mimics the real world in the virtual Green Door Store environment. So they're able to do this using a mobile, a laptop, or a virtual reality headset. So this was a COVID-safe social environment during lockdown to watch bands perform. Before I get into some of the technical aspects of the event, I just want to show a short snippet of one of the performances that we recorded live in Mozilla Hubs, and it's an artist called Nokia Mansion.
Army robot motherfuckers. All right, let's go. Come on. Hey.
We got trapped
Everyone
in the
knows this
fucking
one.
Matrix.
Yeah. I'm tryna be warm inside. What a feeling, fishy. On my mind, been falling. Looking all into you. To me, both collide. Like a star we're falling. Burning, glowing, I'm tryna be warm inside. What a feeling, fishy. On my mind, been falling. Looking all into you. To me, both collide. Like a star we're falling. Burning, glowing, She was in the mirror, I'm done.
She was in the mirror, I'm done. She was in the mirror, I'm done.
She was in the mirror, I'm done.
She was in the mirror, I'm done. Wait, yeah. Close to the edge. I'm a ghost in a shell, I'm a ghost of a man that I was. Smoke burns when I'm looking at my scars. Shit hurts when I'm looking at the past.
So you can see that was really fun. Some of the avatars are like moving around and moshing, which was really cool. I was going to say, while we've just seen that piece of the video from the gig, Nokia Mansion were definitely the artists that really embraced doing a gig in a virtual space, because for a lot of artists, it's a very new concept. So without any guidance at all, they were doing things like saying, how are you doing, internet? We've trapped in the fucking Matrix, open up the mosh pit, I don't care if you're a fucking robot, I'll beat you in the head. And it really added to the performance. So, but I'll touch on that a bit more in a bit. So I wanted to go into the process of how we recorded the performances. So there were 6 artists in total, and we pre-recorded those all at the Green Door Store in the live room, as you can see there, over a day in February of this year. So we had 3 cameras set up, So one shooting full body footage in the middle of the venue, and then a camera on the left and right shooting half body and face close-ups. So that was just as a backup, just in case we felt like we needed that footage. But in the end, we only used the full body footage. So as you can see in the photo as well, we went for very minimal white lighting in case we wanted to add in any colored lighting in post-production. And we wanted the footage to be as bright as possible versus kind of darker footage that you'd have normally at a gig, which might have like reds and greens in it. So, and also usually we'd have the Green Door Store logo on the background, the stage, if you've been to a gig at Green Door Store. So we decided again that we would go for just a plain black background in case we needed to manipulate the size of the video when we imported it into hubs. And we didn't want it messing with the aspect ratio of the size of the performers in the virtual space. So a few things that we learned from hosting a virtual gig were just thinking about the performances. All the artists had to basically perform to a pretty much empty room. There was probably 4 or 5 of us in there with the crew and the cameraman. And for a lot of artists, they need the sort of the energy of the audience, and they feed off that. And for a lot of them, they hadn't done any live performances in over a year. So that was something that we, even me being a musician myself, I hadn't even thought of. So I think going into the next one, that's something we'd definitely consider. And also how we could add to the performance, as I mentioned earlier, if it's in a virtual environment, potentially giving artists some guidance on what they could do, what they could say, to think about the virtual space. And another thing that came up as well that, again, we hadn't thought of is the clothing that the performers are wearing. So I think most of them were wearing quite bright coloured clothes or white hoodies, as Nakia mentioned were. But I think one of the artists had like a lot of black on. So I think he managed to put another kind of coat over it. So he didn't blend too much in the background, which is good. But again, that's something to consider when you're doing virtual gigs. So building on what we'd learned in 2020 with the prototype, we refined the 3D model of Green Door Store with the help of Ellie Watts, who's a local 3D modeler and animator. And we did lots of test runs using a live video feed from Vimeo. So we knew that we couldn't do, well, we wanted to do the event as live, but we felt because it was the first one that we'd done, we'd pre-record all the performances, but we'd have the video as live in Vimeo, feeding into hubs. So whenever you joined hubs, it was like a live gig. So if you missed the first 10 minutes, you missed the first 10 minutes of the performance. There was no going back. And we also did a lot of testing across many devices as possible. So mobiles, laptops, tablets, and also across different browsers. So that's something you have to consider obviously doing a gig in web VR and in VR headsets. So when we promoted the gig, we had to make sure that the messaging was like really, really clear so people could understand what it was that we were promoting in terms of, if they didn't have like a virtual reality headset, could they still come to the gig? So we wanted to just make sure that that was clear on the promotion so that they could join the gig via mobile or laptop if they didn't have a headset. And also making sure that people knew it was live and it wasn't available on catch-up. So just like a gig would be, so kind of gives them that urgency that they've got to show up at a specific time to see the performance. We also had a safe space policy as well. That's something to consider when you're putting on virtual gigs. So just kind of ensuring that everyone behaves appropriately and doesn't cause any offense in considering, just thinking about like bullying or harassment or discrimination. So Hubs has a maximum capacity of 25 people in a room. So to ensure performances across devices, we decided we would decrease that number to 15. So we basically had lots of different iterations of the virtual Green Door Store, which I'll go into shortly. So for the next iteration, we're looking to host that on our own server in order to increase the number of avatars and audience members we can have in each instance of a virtual venue. Some more screen grabs of that's Henna, one of the DJs on the stage with the avatars. So we decided we'd offer 2 ticket types. So we had an individual ticket, which would mean you'd be randomly allocated in a space in the virtual Green Door store with up to 14 others. And we also had group tickets where people could basically buy a ticket for them and 14 of their mates. And we sold about 115 tickets in total. So we had about 100 people come to the gig, which is great. Again, a lesson learned was the group ticketing, there was quite a big drop-off. So we're working on ways of ensuring for the next gig that we do, you'll probably drop the group ticket and then try and figure out a way of bringing in mates together in certain rooms. So because we had 21 virtual versions of the Green Door store, that 15 ticket holders were in each of these different virtual Green Doors, we had to have 8 moderators across all the different rooms, just to ensure the live Vimeo video didn't freeze in any of the rooms, and also to be around to help audience members with any questions. So you can't really see you might not be able to see at the bottom, but Hubs is a really fun experience because you can go in as an avatar and you can move around. There's also options to react. So there's a menu where you can select emojis to like heart the gig or clap. And there's also a chat box, which a lot of our Platform B crew were using on the night, messaging each other. So following the groundbreaking event, Platform B has been commissioned as a producer by Wide Sussex for the 5G Festival, Alternative Stages, taking place in March 2022, which Donna mentioned to you a short while ago. So this will develop the initial concept into a mini festival across a network of 3 or 4 grassroots music venues in the city. One of the venues will be the much-loved Brighton Spiegel tent. Just want to give a shout out to Adrian Bristow, who is here today, who's a producer of the Spiegel tent. And the alternative stages will enable us to refine the way in which artist performances are captured and streamed into VR and upgrade the audience's experience. So beyond the 5G Festival, Platform B is in discussions with Wide Sussex and Brighton Dome and Festival to research and develop an interactive, multi-venue grassroots festival delivering a live hybrid virtual reality experience to remote home and mobile audiences in web-based VR, but also this time what we want to do is, rather than having everyone remotely, we want to have some people remotely that are watching the gig remotely, as well as a live in-person audience. So the challenge to be addressed in the next phase is how to build upon the foundation of the initial R&D while leveraging the potential of 5G and other emerging technologies, including 360-degree streaming and volumetric capture. So the event is intended to encourage artists and audiences to connect and engage through new cultural experiences that blend live virtual performances. That's it. Thank you for listening.
Oh, thank you so much, Nats. That's amazing. Having come out of the live music world myself, and I sort of sit there watching that, just thinking both extremes of positive and of like excitement and fear just start bubbling away of what that can do. I'd like to invite up Bobby Brown. Bobby has also been involved with Platform B as a producer, as a senior producer there. So creative producer and also a brilliant community activist, but we're not particularly talking about that, but we might touch on it. But Bobby is here in his capacity as a manager of emerging artists. And I'm gonna ask you to come and sit here, and I'll just try and get my head. Yeah. Do you want to do that first? Should we do that first? Yeah. Yeah.
Just for context, this is a gig about 5-6 weeks ago, and obviously we've been,
we've been deprived of gigs, but this is an act that I manage called Frankie Stew and Harvey Gunn, Brighton-based artists, and this is in London's O2 Kentish Town Forum, 17th of September. So, yeah. You might want to drop a line.
Just wanna chill on the beach and peace and one day just drink coconuts. Friends and favours, I can't lie, been taking ages. So close and still not made it, but most people flaunt and fake it. That's not cool, that's basic. It's weird that you think you're famous. I'm trying to get my tunes on playlists and get papers, then go away for ages. I know about changes, but can't think of things that make them. I'm still in the barber shop on wages. People think I've made it. I made about 30k this year off music. Look in the bank, it's wasted on too many garms and training.
So I'm going to sit down now, Chris.
That's brilliant. That kind of answers my first question, which was, but I'm still going to ask it anyway, which is, so tell us first about the artists you manage and what kind of acts they are. Just seen one.
So Frank Stew and Harvey Gunn are a kind of rap and production duo that have grown up together, best friends from kind of school days, 15 and 16, independent artists. That's them. And Carl Benjamin is another artist, slightly less established than the boys, but he's a kind of R&B soul singer. And then I've got some other artists kind of in development at the moment who are kind of 17 to sort of 20, so sort of early stages, still at their universities and college stages, really. So sort of helping them, from their, formative stages to their kind of professional career, really.
So when I was coming through in music, which is 20 years ago, live was everything. So I definitely, the community of musicians that I ran with and the people I knew, pretty much across all genres, the thing that you did was just did loads of gigs. Yeah. Taking COVID out of the picture for a moment, to what extent is that still true, or to what extent is that kind of going as a thing, or do you have different ways of breaking artists now?
I think that there's many different ways of breaking artists. For me, the live and the human experience you can't necessarily replicate. I like the hybrid, like Donna's saying, I like it hand in hand. Artists are emerging on TikTok now, right? I'm not a TikToker, never probably will be. It's not necessarily for me. But, a lot of artists are emerging from that. Previously, I managed a singer called Ellie Ingram. Her break was through YouTube, all right? So it happens, but it has to go hand in hand still.
So does that mean that when you experience this kind of still a beta or testing kind of stage, but this kind of developing new process but it sits on top of the live experience. Is your first thought, is this a really exciting thing, or is this a terrifying thing, or both, or what are the, thinking positively first, how do you see that as an opportunity for your artists?
I think, again, like you, I sort of share that fear and optimism, right? Yeah. But for me, it's more helpful to lean towards the optimism. Yeah. I think in terms of accessibility, the digital space opens doors, crosses borders, of course. So I think that's really exciting. I have horror stories of the hybrid of kind of tech and live, and I'll give you the example, I suppose. It was 2014, so it was really early doors. Brixton Academy, I had Ellie Ingram supporting Childish Gambino, and Childish Gambino is, he's, I don't know if you all know, but he's an innovative artist. He's a sort of cross-disciplinary artist. And
at world superstar level, basically.
World superstar level, writes and directs his own series and stuff like that, as well as being an incredible musician in his own right. He had, I think it was Beyond the Internet tour, and Ellie was the support act. And during her support slot, there was a projection, and all of the audience were invited to download an app during or before the show and join the forum. Right, and it wasn't moderated. There was a big projection of this forum and chat room behind the support act, and there was trolling like I've never seen before. being live projected onto a screen while she's performing, and there's me in the audience going, pull that down, pull that down, pull that down, and she's completely oblivious, but the crowd are murmuring away and giggling, and it was the most awkward experience you could possibly imagine. And eventually it did get pulled down, but not before its time, and I think the damage was done. So for me, that was a very, very bad experience of the hybrid, right? On the other side, I've had, great experiences like the Fortnite thing, and even, Platform B's virtual reality during lockdown when we had no other option. That gave me a really great experience that I otherwise wouldn't have experienced. So, there is, different experiences of the technology and the hybridization of that. But I think, it really excites me, sort of some of the stuff that Donna's saying, and, Nat's learning from the virtual reality gig and how that will progress. I think there's been a lot of lessons learned. So
what should young artists who are, well, I say young, what should emerging artists who are encountering this for the first time, do you think that what should their approach be, do you think?
I mean, for me, it's about what comes naturally to you. I think there is such a broad range of options within the tech space, whether it is just live streaming on Twitch and chatting to your artists, or gaming on Twitch and chatting to your audience, your fan base. There's live streaming on Instagram even, right? There's been so much sort of exploration in the live stream and broadcasting space. I would encourage artists to do what feels natural to them, but explore the options, and I think for me it's really important that artistry is at the fore, and it's not just a case of building an audience and getting loads of followers and things like that, because if your art isn't of quality or of stature, then you're not going to maintain that audience.
Well, and also presumably, as with any new kind of platform or technological development in the arts, some artists are going to sort of use it just a little bit to maybe it's a new way of promoting what they were doing anyway, while other artists are going to almost shift what they do completely to embrace that.
Absolutely. I think some artists will exist solely in the digital space, and I don't doubt that for a second. That's not there's no artist that I'm working with at the moment that favours. There are some who are perhaps maybe more introvert or have social anxiety, who would prefer to exist in that space but don't necessarily have the resources or understanding or knowledge, of how to exist in that space. And it is such a new space, right? So we're all learning here. I think no one has the answer right now. Donna, Nats, we're all learning in this space. I think that is what is so exciting, but at the same time, there is a bit of a fear in it. There's been a lot of sort of live streaming opportunities for my artists. They're like, that doesn't interest me. I just want live shows back. But for me, I'm excited by the innovation in the live and digital space in partnership.
So for you do sound really positive about it.
Not only quite recently, to be honest.
Oh, right, yeah, okay.
I think since I've been back to a few gigs, I'm like, oh, thank God. Thank God there's gigs back, right? Now and again, through even Donna's presentation just now, I've learned a lot about the hybridization of live music, and I think that really excites me. And, this word metaverse that has come about, I've only heard about it the last 2 weeks, but for me, I see it and I understand it a bit more, and it is so new and fast moving that naturally we have fear of the unknown. But I think I've learned that my optimism and sort of trust for it is a little bit, I suppose, is a little bit more established. I did have a fear. I was like, is this a surveillance state? Are we now digital? Am I going to be wearing VR headsets for the rest of my life? Am I going to have food wired into me? That's on the fear side. But on the other side, what can be done with this technology is beyond our wildest imagination, I think.
Have your artists already started talking about it and thinking about it? And also, have you got different views among your stable?
Absolutely. So different views, absolutely. Yeah. And some artists have been thinking about it, but don't necessarily have access to the technology yet. So they're very much thinking about it. They're experiencing it for themselves in many different spaces, whether it is watching a live stream gig on YouTube, Instagram, or if it's within the gaming world as well. So they're exploring it, but their sort of fear, I suppose, or reservations are still there. I suppose, yeah.
Is there, if I'm allowed a kind of scary moment,
Do it.
is there a threat to live gigging? Do you think there's a threat to the real gig?
I think we're all aware of the threat still, right? In that we're not through this. We are still in this pandemic, and I think that is the threat.
So that's actually a different thing. That's
a whole different thing. I can't see people adopting a VR experience over the option of a live experience. I can see it working in partnership. I don't think if all of a sudden there's loads of VR that you're just going to lose out on live gigs. I personally cannot see that happening because I wouldn't personally choose the VR over the live experience, you know. But again, my excitement very much lies in the partnership of the two.
I think a lot of people inside the live music world at the moment are really quite hyper aware of the kind of ongoing COVID things. And for example, the ticket drop off. So we're sort of all, and I'm sure you're doing this all the time when you're putting when you've got an artist playing, you're really aware that at the moment, people not showing up to gigs that they've bought tickets for already is off the charts.
Yeah, something like 30-40%.
30-40%, when traditionally pre-COVID it would be between up to about 5%.
Yeah.
Although some of that is skewed by some of the gigs are rolled over tours that have been rolled over a couple of times, and in the case of rolled over tours, people are more likely not to go because they paid the money like 2 years ago or something. So it's easier to not bother showing up. But so we'll get a better picture maybe next year when it's new events.
Absolutely, it is still in recovery.
So maybe the threat to not just live music, but the kind of daunting stats about live entertainment are an issue. But maybe this is part of the solution or part of a route forward rather than itself being a threat to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I invite Nats and Donna to come back and to come and sit on the chairs? Are you? Yeah, is that all right? So we have a microphone. Is it Sol? Have you got the microphone? So I'm going to throw it open to you lovely people out there. Does anyone have a question or comment to kick us off? This is where the evening ends really quickly.
As a live event and music photographer, I have quite a few fears going forward.
Can you use it? Yeah. Say it again, because that's really good stuff.
As a live music and entertainment and event photographer, I'm obviously quite wary and worried about the future of what's going to be happening with the staging of events, because if it does go onto the virtual world, then myself and other photographers, where does that leave us to be able to convey events and performances?
What has for live music photography, what's it been like for the last sort of 10 years or so? Is it steady or has it got tougher?
It's up and down. It's always been up and down. But COVID obviously didn't help.
No.
And pre that, there was obviously the issues with a lot of venues closing down locally, which obviously put the fear up everyone. The ever-closing landscape is quite daunting, but also it's exciting to see things like the 5G Digital Festival coming alive and being able to showcase artists and get music and events out there. But as I say, for people like myself that work differently within the industry, where will we go forward?
I think that's a really interesting point, and I have been very conscious since putting on shows to try and involve people who have missed out over the last 18 months, 2 years, you know, very, very much trying to pay those people who have missed out, because I understand firsthand what it's like. Live shows have been a massive part of my income, which obviously has been lost out on. I think going forward, you might find, I do believe and I have optimism that we will see live shows return to full capacity. The show that I showed you there, 2,300 people in a room, you know, that is part of where I get my optimism from. I think also, you know, again, I'm far from an expert. There's no doubt more experts in this room than me in the metaverse and the blockchain and crypto sort of advancement. And I think yourself as an artist, you know, photographer, but an artist, and NFTs and how, you know, a photo from a gig perhaps has more value now, right? And how you could potentially sell a photo for far, far more than previous. There is hope to be had, you know. I think, yeah, I'm someone who has wrestled with, you know, fear, optimism, very much so, but it hasn't been good for my mental health to exist in the fear zone, right? So I think the optimism is really important to maintain, and also, you know, we as humans have to evolve or become extinct, right? So don't have fear of innovation, right? But also be wary, of course, be wary. Don't be naive to the risks and yeah, you know, yeah.
And
No
say
problem.
as well, sorry, if you could just think, like as Bobby was saying, in an innovative way and actually start jumping into virtual worlds, just to see maybe there's some sort of opportunity that you haven't thought about with your photography that could come out of actually just trying some of the tech if you're able to. There might be some sort of role within that space that no one's thought about yet that you could do. So I'd say definitely encourage that.
The photogrammetry.
Photogrammetry,
right? That is
Yeah.
not actually too. I don't know your name, but Xavier. That's not too far from your skill set, essentially, photogrammetry and you know, developing the foundation of your skill set into this world. You know, there is skills to be adopted that don't necessarily mean you have to change career path.
Yeah, and also people, you know, when they have digital, you know, experiences, they still want to be able to capture and remember that as well. I mean, I think digital is always really interesting because it's permanently archiving, isn't it? It's permanently, you know, talking about the past, you know, and there is something there. There's probably an unexplored market about, you know, going along to these virtual gigs and doing sort of captures of avatars there, and then being able to monetize that in some way as well, you know. But I always think that there's always a real, you know, there's always, it always makes me reflect on the real human need. You know, we've always been involved in music. We've always had events together. Do you know what I mean? And there is something that there's obviously something really innate in us that's being served by that. We've always wanted to remember those, you know, or share those or communicate those as well. But it is about just trying to think about, okay, well, what are the different contexts and platforms and technologies that we've used. And I do think we're at an interesting moment where all this stuff is, you know, feels exciting and innovative, and maybe it'll be nothing, and maybe it'll be everything in the way we do things in the future. Or I think it's just still too close to call, and maybe we won't know. You know, we'll just keep on experimenting and innovating and see what happens.
And how, are you shooting on digital or film? Digital.
Oh. Because there'll be a premium in film now, isn't it? There will always be the sort of push to analog.
You know, and I don't know if you've always shot digitally. Well, and what, you know, there were, I, you know, used to take a lot of photos. I was a photographer, did the nightclub photography, all of that. So I think I understand. But there was hesitance moving over to digital from film, and there still is a lot of resistance, right? And film is by no means dead. Right. So I think, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely, mate.
Can we hear from you over here?
Sure. Is this microphone on?
Yes, it's on.
Okay, so it's going through Teams now. You mentioned markets, new markets. I wondered about if you'd noticed any emerging new audiences. So what we're talking about here is not just something that you can experience at home, it's something you can experience on the other side of the planet. Are there other audiences that you're excited about for the future, rather than thinking about where you're going to be yourselves in virtual reality, but the audiences? How exciting is that?
Anyone here? For me, the audiences that exist digitally on the internet are far greater than the ones you can fit in a room, right? So gaming, again, I'm not necessarily a gamer, but the booming in gaming and also the sort of the gaming economy is just going from strength to strength to strength. And I don't know, it definitely isn't slowing down anytime soon. There is now gaming teams, there is paid gamers. I was having a conversation with a 14-year-old on Friday about how he's number 5 in the world on Minecraft or something like this, but his parents want him to become a doctor. Right, it's not necessarily a doctor, but do you know what I mean? And he's trying to convince his parents that no, I'm making money here. Look, and they still don't want him to be a gamer. So.
What would you say from your point of view as a producer? How are you going to promote your artists on the other side of the planet that they are available in VR to anybody in the world?
I think through social media, artists are developing a following and an audience, and have been for the last 10 years. So they have a platform to promote whatever it is they're doing, whether it is a live gig. That's where, the Ned behind you is an event promoter, right? He will tell you that part of his promotion strategy now will be digital, right? Flyers and posters don't necessarily have the same impact as social media advertising, So therefore, artists will naturally develop a community, an audience online that they will invite to both virtual and real life experiences.
It's been a really interesting growth as well, of course, in gigs and music artists being on in-game environments, in-game worlds, like Fortnite was mentioned, and also, I'm going to say the name wrong and really show up myself, but Roblox. That's the one. And I think that's really interesting. The fact that you can see where the established sort of labels and agents are looking into those spaces, going to where the young people are. Going to where the young people are in order to reach those audiences. I think is quite an interesting sort of strategy. But I think on the other side, I was so inspired by Nat's talk because of this really sort of exciting and practical and DIY place, and you can really imagine they're building Brighton's grassroots venues in VR, and then that becomes something that could be available to anyone in the world. And I just think, oh my gosh, that's so exciting. Because, you think about Brighton, the physical place attracts, 11 million visitors a year. Why couldn't, the virtual grassroots venue could easily 10 times that? I think that's really, really exciting. You think about that in terms of platforming unsigned and new talent, which I think is why it's such a brilliant project.
I was going to say, just thinking about audiences, because we live in Brighton, which is such an amazing, rich cultural city, but there's people that live on the outskirts and don't live in big cities. And I think something like this could be really interesting for them, that they may not be able to kind of make live gigs, in-person gigs, whether it's due to it's too far to travel, or maybe they're too young. And I think a lot of the stuff going on in the gaming world is interesting. Like with Fortnite, because Travis Scott did. I definitely recommend checking it out if you can. It is on YouTube if you don't have Fortnite. The amount of audience members, he had 27 million people watching him in Fortnite, which is just mind-blowing. And also just, I guess, the revenue that can be built off that. I think he made about 20 million in merch sales. So people buying the skins for their avatars. And I think that could be a really interesting model as well going forward for the grassroots artists as well.
But also, I guess, driving people to the live experience as well. There's also that whole thing about that could put a premium on the live experience. You know what I mean? Because this artists that you've seen in the virtual world that you get excited about, gosh, there's an opportunity to go and see them in the flesh. That's what's become something that becomes part of the marketing stuff as well, potentially.
Absolutely. I think, from a marketing point of view, like you're saying, you will reach audiences in the virtual world that you can't in the physical world, but that doesn't mean they don't translate over. And I think what is really excited about what Platform B and Nats is doing about developing these virtual spaces is that, people can experience them from far away. And they might love the space so much that they decide to, in reality, fly over. Yeah. Right? I remember there was NBA. I don't know if it's an NBA game. It's probably about 10 years ago. But Brighton basketball court is featured in an NBA game on the PlayStation, and it's not too dissimilar from kind of what you're doing now. It's just far more, I suppose, in real life. Sort of in real time, I suppose. Yeah.
Any more questions or comments? Oh, here we go. Here's one. Can you wait for the microphone to get to you?
I was just thinking about how, so with with virtual reality gigs and stuff like that, there is an opportunity to make the actual sonic experience better than a live gig. Because, I mean, I don't know about everyone else, but I've been to a few live gigs and festivals and stuff like that, and you turn up and it's just like, straight in your face. And you can't hear a thing, but you enjoy it because of the experience of being there. So I feel like having some kind of virtual space where you can actually hear properly and have proper good quality sound coming through, as well as the visual part of it. And I was really intrigued actually about the being able to move through the space and hear different people and, you know, talk to people and stuff like that. I was wondering if there is any kind of possibility of, do you actually hear different parts of the sound by moving through the stereo field?
Yeah, sorry that I couldn't actually demo it. I wanted to show, it just kind of meant jumping into FuseBox, but I could show it to you afterwards if you want. I could show you, if you wanted to jump into the virtual Green Door store. But basically it's spatial audio, so if you move, when the performer was on, if you were right in front of the stage, it was really loud, and then the further you move back into the venue, it got quieter, so it meant that you could go into the bar area and like speak to your mates without like the music blaring over, so you could hear, because obviously that experience is slightly different, obviously in a virtual space versus like being at a gig itself. But I think there's lots of interesting things you could do with spatial audio.
It's a really important part of 5G Castle, actually. It's interesting, the immersive audio aspect of it, because it's so integrated into the possibilities of 5G and the possibilities of immersive and interactive technologies. So, you know, I talked about those 3 use cases, artists collaborating remotely as well. It's so great to have Ned here, because Ned was one of our artists for our first trial. So one of the first artists in the world to use this technology. And have a chat, yeah. And it'd be good to have a chat with him, because the Clang thing was cool, wasn't it? Like where you could mix your own audio. What did you think of that? Did it make a difference to you in terms of?
It made me. It actually made me quite. It was scary how you could hear all the 3D sounds and stuff, and just. I guess it's something that once it's established, you're gonna feel like you needed it all along. But there's one of them ones where it's like, it's weird. When I used it, when all our musicians used it, where when we use like the same instrument without the 3D energy, it just feels wrong.
Oh, addicted already. It's great.
Yeah.
You can even imagine a kind of silent discoisation of the live world, where if you've got hybrid events, you've got events with people actually in the space enjoying the gig, but they've all got headphones on. And there's been a theatre, the Encounter, which was Théâtre de Complicité, which was at the Barbican. It's been hugely successful one-man theatre show where you're in the live space, you're watching in the Barbican, but you're hearing it all on headphones, and the whole show is, it takes away the idea of projecting your voice and it all being like distant, and suddenly you've got a theatre show where you can hear whispers, and the actor on stage can create a soundscape, and that's definitely possible. In some ways, I always think that one of the bits that the tech side tends to miss out of this experience is the sound, because they're so excited about this amazing new immersive visual experience, but they're often not musical. Oh, they might be music fans, but you know, there are definitely tech people out there who aren't that bothered about the music. And then we all know, as everyone who's sitting on the music side of the equation knows, that music is incredibly immersive anyway, and we've all spent our lives listening to music incredibly enrichingly through 2 ears with 2 speakers right next to them, and that is a completely enveloping experience. And so maybe some of the innovations that's going to come out of this are going to marry that a bit better, and that will be one of the...
I've got to say, ours is like, I'm fighting for the visual all the time, because it's all audio experts and people who come
so
from
they are audiophiles.
Audio first,
Yeah.
absolutely. And rather than have people with headphones in the crowd, it's about using immersive audio systems and then integrating that with the visuals.
So the audio system in the room.
Yeah, you've just got like
brilliant.
a surround audio system that's really sensitive to where all the different sounds are.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
So yeah, it's like I said, I'm fighting.
So
for
that sounds
visuals.
like that would improve the live experience as well in quite a major way, even for the person who's not got any headphones on or anything. We're running out of time. Got time for one more question or comment if anyone's got anything they'd like to add. Colin, can we get the mic over to Colin? Brilliant, thanks, Sol.
Yeah, I just thinking again about. I love that idea of the way of merging the kind of the virtual and the real in different spaces. And there are two things that jumped in my mind. You know, there's COVID and difficulty of gigging around that, but there's also Brexit, which has made it very, very difficult for a band to get in a van and go to Europe. There's been visa issues with America, about going to America and all the rest of it. So, and then, of course, there's the green issues. And so the idea that somehow we can mix a kind of a live performance and a virtual performance together to get to audiences around the world. Perhaps audience is located in different venues. You can actually have someone performing in one space and for that to be an experience in a venue somewhere else. Because the thing that kind of concerns me is, like you said about the audio, Chris, you know, you can't govern how somebody is going to consume something. And if they're consuming it on their phone, you know the audio is going to be shit. It's just the reality. It's like when people, you know, we just think, oh my God, everybody's going to be listening to our radio show on their, you know, on their computer or something like that, and it's just going to sound rubbish. Nobody's ever going to hear the bass, you know. It's like, but that was just my comment, really. I didn't really need to say anything else.
I think that's a really great comment because already you've inspired, you know, ideas for me personally. I was like, so I can, you know, like you're saying, this is audio led because I think that's the easiest to stream, right, in terms of the latency. Sorry. But, you know, once this does develop, if you think about, you know, holographic experiences, you know, live streaming, the visual aspect, once that catches up as well, there's no reason for you not replicating. Obviously, it's not going to be exactly the same, but, you know, replicating in different spaces. Yeah, we kind of got to get beyond ABBA, really, but, you know.
Yeah. But also, I think it's like, you know, it's like the whole thing about, you know, when there was the beginning of those experimentations with like live theatre in cinemas, you know, and actually there is something that's different from watching it on your telly to watching it in a sort of big, you know, 7 surround sound on a big screen and things like that. And I'm quite interested, we're touching a little bit on it with the 5G Festival, like whether people would be willing to go to a venue to have a streamed experience if it's got that immersive audio and if it's got a massive screen and it's a live gig that's happening somewhere else, but it's happening live, it's just in that moment and you're hearing it in a really great quality. Because my sense is that people would. I think I would.
I think you could, if you've got an international audience, you could perhaps, you know, I just thinking about the difficulty of touring right now. I mean, it's been difficult already for 2 years, but, you know, like I don't see next year being any easier, really.
No.
Yeah, that's true. The exciting side of it is it almost feels like we're all talking about filmmaking in 1905 and everyone's like, oh, there's so many possibilities, and somewhere around there's a 10-year-old Orson Welles just floating around, or a 15-year-old Orson Welles who's going to come and do something incredible. So it does feel really exciting. But then the rest of the real world feels really daunting. But that's maybe how it is. Before we finish, could you each tell us how people can get in touch with you if they want to track you down?
Yeah, so Platform B is across all the socials at Platform B Radio, or it's nats@platformb.org.uk. And like I said, if anyone wants to check out the virtual Green Door store on my laptop afterwards, please come and see me and I will show it to you. You can try it out.
Yes. And myself, you can chat to me after, of course, in real life, or on the digi stuff. You can email me at bobby@thenewsociety.org.uk.
Twitter's probably the easiest one for me to say. I've got so many different email addresses, so just at Donna_Close on Twitter is the best way, and then I will accept your friendship on that.
That's brilliant. And not that I'm part of this, but I'm Chris Thorpe-Tracy, and you can find me at ChrisTT on Twitter. And I've had great time, so I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it. You've been great. Yeah, it's been really good. It's been really good.
Chris, sorry, I don't know if you want to mention there's a social tonight, right?
Yes, I was literally about.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know you had that on your list.
Do you mean at Presuming Ed?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
So it's I think it's the launch for Mutations Festival, isn't it? So there's a night of incredible live music actually at Presuming Eds this evening, being hosted and run by Slack City, the sibling station of Platform B. and we've got Slack City DJs, and then I can't remember all the bands. I know that Lime Garden are playing, but I can't remember the other bands. But the most incredible lineup of bands playing a space that's much smaller than they would normally play. So that's this evening. There's tons going on in Brighton, and one thing I kept thinking was, you know, with live things that you can't then revisit, this does make that easier, because there's Brighton Digital stuff going on tonight as well. There's a fascinating conversation about NFTs at the Lighthouse tonight. There's a wonderful She Says Brighton is on tonight. I think that is virtual. So there's loads of stuff, and then you imagine, oh, well, I can only go to one, so I'm going to go to Presuming Eds. But then you kind of think, oh, I'd like to watch it all. And if we got to a point where you could immerse yourself in it all, it would be amazing. But do what you like. Thanks so much for coming. And there is another of these events later in the month. I'm very sorry, I can't remember can anyone remind me of the date of the next one? Is it December the 3rd? Yeah, so December the 3rd will be another similar event, Alternative Stages, with people talking about another aspect of this topic. The word topic's nice, isn't it? Wow, excellent. Yeah. They on Bake Off, they made a Twix, and then so they all made a Twix on Bake Off. I mean, it's a competition. They made a Twix. And ever since they did it, I just see Twixes everywhere. It's just ridiculous. So thanks so much. Take care, and feel free to sort of network and hang out and speak to our speakers. And this is me signing off. Thank you. That was great.